So, good morning to my fellow classmates and schoolmates, as well as our Coach Jude Martinez. Good morning. So, we are the Study Hub for, which is the Erupdition Force. So, today we are here to present the task that given to us. But before we proceed, let me first introduce the reporters and their designated assigned topic that they are going to explain. So, let's begin. So now let's proceed to our discussion, which are the psychoanalytic theory and the psychosexual theory by Sigmund Freud. So first, let's discuss who is Sigmund Freud. So Sigmund Freud was born in Freiburg Town, Czech Republic on May 6, 1856. He graduated from Medical Faculty, University of Vienna on 1881. Sigmund Freud was officially recognized on 1896. He released the book Interpretation of Dreams in 1990s, and he passed away in Homestead House on September 23, 1939. So now, let's have an overview of psychoanalytic theory. When we say psychoanalytic theory, it is a set of philosophical of human nature. This is a psychoanalysis is both an approach to therapy and the theory of personality. It emphasizes unconscious motivation. The main cause of behavior lie in our unconscious mind. So psychoanalytic theory is all about the human nature. It is a theory of our personality. So when we say human nature, it has two categories which are the deterministic and the human as energy system. So when we say deterministic, it is life is about gaining pleasure and avoiding pain. When we say human as energy system, Freud believed that humans are motivated by the unconscious, where the id is found along with the aggression and the sex instinct. So in our life, in our mental life, we have three levels, which are the unconscious, preconscious, and the conscious mind. So when we say unconscious, it contains all the feeling, urges, or instinct that are beyond our awareness. We don't know about it. We don't know about it first, right? So, but it affects our expression, feelings, and actions. For example, when we sleep of think, our dreams and wishes, those are unconscious because we are not aware of those things that will happen. So that is unconscious. When we say preconscious, it is a fact stored in a part of the brain which are not conscious but are available for possible use in the future. For example, a person will never think of her home address at that moment, but when her friend asks for it, she can easily recall it. Why? Because she already know their address. So those information, she already have it in her mind. So what we call it for me, I call it our vocabulary. Alright? So next we have the conscious. So when I say conscious, only level of mental life that are directly available to us. It is the awareness of our mental process. For example, our thoughts and feelings. We're conscious about it because we already know that it's already within our self. So now, let's proceed to our next discussion. So, we already know that we have three structures, levels of our personality. So, I know you already know, which are the id, the ego, and the super ego. So, what is id? So, it is an infants are born with id intact, operates on pleasure, principle. To gain pleasure, avoid pain, driven by sexual and aggressive urge. So it is about our satisfaction. As long as it satisfied ourselves, it doesn't care about anything. As long as it satisfies ourselves. So it's all about satisfactions. When we say ego is the rational level of personality. It operates on reality principle, thus realistic and logical thinking, the balance between the id and the superego. That is the ego. When we say superego, partially unconscious, operates on moral principles, able to differentiate between good and bad, right and wrong. If people follow their superego, they will feel proud about it. If they don't follow their superego, they will feel guilty and unconscious. Those are the three structures of our personality. So, for example, my id says that I want to eat chocolates, but my ego says eat a small bar of chocolate, and my super ego says that I am on super diet. So the id is I want to eat chocolate because he wants satisfactions within herself, and the super ego is he wanted to have a diet. So our ego is the balance. He treated equally our personality. For example, our id he will let our id eat a little amount of chocolate, but he also he will also let our superego to have an exercise. So he will balance all those personality we have in our self. That is our ego, the balance of our personality, right? So we all know that our psychoanalytic theory is all about the human nature, which is it has two categories, which is the deterministic and the what we call this the human as energy system. And then we have three levels of mental life, which is the unconscious, pre-conscious, and the conscious. And then the last is the structures of our personality, which is the id, the ego, and our super ego. So now let's proceed to our next discussion, which is the psychosexual stages. What is psychosexual stages? It is a children progress through 6 psychosexual stages during psychosexual development, right? So a person becomes fixated or stuck in a stage when a basic need is not met. Therefore, that person will face difficulty in transiting to another stage in their life, right? So, Freud has 5 psychosexual stages of development, which is the oral, 0 to 2 years old, anal, 2 to 3 years old, phallic, 3 to 7 years old, latency, 7 to 11 years old, and genital, 11 to adult. So let's discuss what are those 5 stages of psychosexual development. So first, oral stage. What is oral stage? It is a birth to from birth to 18 months or 0 to 2 years old. So it is a pleasure centers on the mouth, sucking, biting, fixation, right? So we all know those infants when they are born from 0 to 2 years old, they are more on like sucking, right? They are more the mother is more on breastfeeding. If not breastfeeding, they're going to suck their milk bottle, right? So in fixation, if the child is overstimulated in this stage, when he become adult, she or may become dependent on a cigarette or alcohol, or become a chatterbox, or derive pleasure from acquiring possessions or collect things. So, if the child is under stimulated in the stage as an adult, she or he will make biting sarcastic remarks or be argumentative or so talkative, right? That is an oral stage. So when we say anal stage, it is an 18 months until 3 years old to 2 to 3 years old. It is a pleasure, focuses on bowel movements. So I know you already know what is bowel movement because each one of us came from infants to adult, right? So withholding and eliminating phases. That is bowel movement, right? So in fixations, if parents were overemphasizing potty training, the child will develop a retentive character. He will become obstinate and stingy. So he will sting it, right? So if parents were negligent about potty training, the child will develop expulsive traits such as bad temper, cruelty, and messy disorderliness. That's disorderliness, right? So if our parents when we are young, if our parents if our parents train as well during that potty training. So when we become adult, we're like stingy, right? So become obsessed. When our parents is not about what do you call this? It's not about it's negligence in our potty training. So when we are become adult, we're going to be a messy person. And not person. I mean, in terms on messy disorderliness. Sorry, and we're going to have a bad temper and cruelty, right? So now let's proceed to the three stages, which is the phallic stage. It is a 3 years to 6 years old. It is a pleasure zone, is the sex organ or genitals. Sex organ or genitals. Fixation, Oedipus complex in males and Electra complex in female. The boy will have the desire to possess his mother and displace his father, and the girl will want to possess the father and remove her mother. Oedipus complex is that when the infant baby, I mean the baby from 3 years old to 6 years old, they're going to be jealous to their father because they're more on possessed to their mother. That is what we call Oedipus. They will possess their mother instead of their father because if their father will come near to their mother, they will become jealous. So Electra, it is the opposite of Oedipus. So complex, right? So that is a phallic stage. So sorry. So when a child womb had been fixated in this stage, will develop a phallic character such as reckless, proud, and vain. Dito na. Sorry. So this conflict can also cause the child to be afraid of close relationship and weak sexual identity. So Freud stated that fixation may be a root of homosexuality. So now let's proceed to latency stage from 6 years old to 11 years old until puberty. So no fixations occur as the child's energy are focused on peer activities and persons because we're already old on this time, right? Activities and personal mastery of learning and physical skills because when those fixations we have in our from infant to the adult. So in this stage, no fixations occur because we already have this personality developed in ourselves. So in this stage, it is only focused on the peer activities. That's why we have the socializations, socialize to another child, to another in our neighbors, and the personal mastery of learning and physical skills by knowing ourselves. So now we have our genital stage. So 5, the last one. So it is 12 years and onwards until we become adult. So it is a sexual interest in opposite sex increase. So this is where we develop infatuations, mostly infatuation. So the child improve the personal identities, develop caring feelings toward another's. So it establish a loving and sexual relationship and progress in successful careers. So, fixation, frigidity, impotence, and unsatisfactory relationships. So, in our relationship, we have a defense mechanism, right? A defense mechanism. Let's say defense mechanism are invented by the ego in an attempt to resolve the conflict between the id and the superego, because he is the balance of our personality, right? So that's why it it develops by the our ego, the defense mechanism, so that personality can operate in a healthy manner. So it deny or distort reality while operating in unconscious level. If it is used once a while, the purpose of using it is to reduce stress. But if it is used frequently, it means the individual are trying to avoid facing reality. So that's defense mechanism is. So um and we have seven types of defense mechanism. First is repression. It is an unpleasant experiences are stored deep in the subconscious mind and can be accessed by the conscious mind, or let's call it the basic defense mechanism. For example, an accident victim nearly dies but remembers none of the details of the accident. Why? Because when his subconscious mind already know, but he can't accept it, his conscious mind can't accept it. That's why he can't remember the details of the accident. So that we call is the basic defense mechanism, because he can't accept those accidents. And now let's have the second types, the displacement. When we say displacement, it is redirecting the feelings of hostility and violent action from self to another that is less threatening from original source. For example, angered by a neighbor's hateful comment, a mother punished her child for accidentally spilling her drinks. When I say redirecting the feelings is directly, for example, our parents, right? Our mother. When we have, what do you call this? When we have some things we do that is bad, so our mother will punish us immediately. That is the displacement, redirecting, right? So now we have the third, the rationalization. So what is rationalization? Rationalization, it is providing a reasonable explanation to make undesirable behavior appear logical. For example, a student who fails a test because she did not study hard enough, but he blames her failure on the teachers for using tricky questions. Those are the defense mechanism that he have. He blamed the teacher for using a tricky questions. That is rationalizations. Even though he or she know within himself that it's her or his fault that he didn't study. That's why he failed the test. But instead, he blamed her teacher for using a tricky questions. So that is rationalization. So now let's proceed to the fourth, which is the denial. So when we say denial, it is a reality is distorted to make it suit to the individual's wishes. Example, an alcoholic fails to acknowledge that he is addicted, to alcohol. So he doesn't know that he already know that he is addicted to alcohol, but he still deny it. So, so next we have the fifth types, which is the regressions. What is regression? Regression is returning to a behavior pattern characteristic of an earlier stage of development. For example, after Lucy's parents' divorce, she refused to sleep alone, and then she crawled into her mother's bed. Why is that? Because Lucy feels when she recalled those things uh when she recalls the things that happened to her mother and father, they got separated. So She feels within herself that she's afraid that her mother will leave her also. That's what we call is a regression. Types defense mechanism. So now let's proceed to the re- six types, which is the reaction formation. So what is reaction formation? A reaction formation is thinking or behaving in a way that is the extreme opposite to those that are of real intention. For example, a woman who loves an unobtainable man and believes as though she hates him, even though she loves that man, but she let herself believe that she hates that man, that we call it a reaction formation. That is types of defense mechanism, a reaction formation. So now let's discuss the last part of the defense mechanism, which is the projection. What is projection? Projection is the attribution of one's unacceptable urges or qualities to others. Unacceptable urges or qualities to others. For example, a person in extremely bad mood accuses family members of being hard to get along with. So, he unacceptable urges or qualities to others. He blames other people. He blamed their family members that it's hard to get along even though he is the person in extremely bad mood, right? So that is what we call a projection. So now let's proceed to our topic 2, which is the cognitive development theory by Jean Piaget, or the theory of cognitive development. So first, let's discuss who is Jean Piaget. So Jean Piaget was born on August 9, 1896 in Switzerland and died on September 16, 1980 at the age of 84. So his parents is Arthur Piaget and Rebecca Jackson. So his educational attainment, he received PhD from University of Neuchâtel in 1918 and married to Valentine Châtenay in 1923. So he has three children, namely Jacqueline, Lucienne, and Laurent. His intellectual development from infancy to language was studied by their father, Jean Piaget. So, Jean Piaget was one of the 20th century's most influential researchers in the area of developmental psychology. He was originally trained in the areas of biology and philosophy and considered himself as a genetic epistemologist. Piaget wanted to know how children learn through their development in the study of knowledge. So, he administered Binet's IQ, Binet, sorry, rather. So IQ tests in Paris and observed that children answers were qualitatively different. So Piaget's theory is based on the idea that the developing child's build cognitive structures. So he believes that the child's cognitive structures increases with the development. Piaget's theory of infant development were based on his observations of his three children. So let's sorry. Let's discuss first what is cognition. So what is cognition? Cognition, the term cognition is derived from the Latin word cognoscere, which means to know or to recognize or to conceptualize. So cognition is the mental action or process of acquiring knowledge and understanding through thought, experience, and senses. So, what is cognitive development? So, cognitive development is the emergence of the ability to think and understand. So, the accusations of the ability to think, reason, and solve problem. So, it is also the process by which people's thinking changes across the lifespan. So, from infants to adults, so their thinking will change, right? So, Piaget studied cognitive development by observing children in particular to examine how their thought process change with age. So, he examined how our thought change as long as we age. As we age, rather, sorry. So, it is the growing apprehensions and adaptation to the physical and social environment. So, how cognitive development occurs? So, cognitive development is gradual and orderly changes by which mental process becomes more complex and sophisticated. So, the essential development of cognition is the establishment of new schemes. So, assimilations and accommodations are both the process of the ways of cognitive development, and the equilibrations is the symbol of new stage of the cognitive development. So those are the key concepts of cognitive development. So, but we're going to discuss those key concepts of cognitive development in order for us to understand those. So first, so now let's proceed to the next stage, which is the pre-operational stage, 2 to 7 years old, which is the toddler and the early childhood. So this stage begins when the child starts to use symbols and language. So this period develop language and concepts. So the child is capable of more complex and mental representations. For example, is the words and the images. So he is still unable to use operation. For example, logical mental rules such as rules of arithmetic, because we already know that it is too way hard for them. So this stage is further divided into two sub-stages, which is the pre-conceptual stage, 2 to 4 years old, and the intuitive stage, which is 4 to 7 years old. So when we say pre-conceptual stage, it is increased use of verbal representation, but speech is egocentric. So the child uses symbols to stand for actions. For example, we all know that infants love playing. So he pretend like he is a mommy or a dad. He or she is pretend he is a mommy, or he or she is a mommy or daddy. And then those dolls, those toys they have, the doll, represent as their baby. So in this stage, the child uses symbols to stand for actions. So let's proceed to the intuitive stage, 4 to 7 years old. So, speech becomes more social, so less egocentric. Here's the child base their knowledge on what they feel or sense to be true. So, yet they cannot explain an underlying principles behind what they feel or sense. So first, the first key of the concept is the schema. So schema is an internal representations of the world. So it helps an individual understand the world they inhabit. So it will help us understand the world where we live. So they are cognitive structures that represent a certain aspect of the world and can be seen as categorized, which have certain preconceived ideas on them. So for example, when we taught the word Christmas, so we already know within ourselves that Christmas, when we say the word Christmas, it has the Christmas tree, gifts, giving money, presents, changing gift. So these I mean, such as word Jesus birth, church, holiday, and Christianity, and there's a lot more about Christmas. So that is schema, our internal representations of the world. And so that is schema. So now let's proceed to assimilation, the second concepts, the second key concepts of the cognitive development. So when we say assimilation, it is using an existing schema to deal with new object or situations. So here, the learner first new idea into what he already knows. In assimilation, the schema is not changed. It is only modified. So for example, the child knows already he already saw a clown, right? He already a clown. And then when he go outside, and then he saw a bald man, and his hair is in the side of his hair. I mean, his hair is in the side of his head. And then when he see that man, he will act like, oh, it's a clown, it's a clown. That is assimilation work. And his schema has already know he already saw a clown what looks like. But in his assimilation, since he already know what is a clown, in assimilations he have a new idea for what he saw the bald man as a clown. That is assimilation work. So let's proceed to our third key concepts in our what is it called this cognitive development. So when accommodation. So accommodation. So when I say accommodation, this happens when the existing schema knowledge or the knowledge does not work and needs to be changed to deal with a new object or situation in accommodation. So the schema is altered. A new schema may be developed. For example, when I see earlier about the clown, so in accommodation, the boy's father will explain to him that that's not a clown. Though even though he looks like a clown because of his hair, but he is not a clown because he's not wearing a funny costume, and then he is not doing silly things to make people laugh. So with this new knowledge, the boy was be able to change his schema of clown and make his idea fit better to the standard concept of clown. So what that is the accommodation. So next we have the equilibration. So when we say equilibrations, Piaget believed that cognitive development did not progress at a steady rate, but rather in leaps and bounds. Equilibrium occurs when a child's schemas can deal with the most new information through assimilation. So as a child progresses through the stages of cognitive development, it is important to maintain the balance between applying previous knowledge, which is the assimilations, and changing behavior to account for new knowledge, which is the accommodation. So, equilibrium helps explain how children are able to move from one stage of thought to the next stage of their thoughts, right? So next, let's proceed to the next topic, which is cognitive development has four stages of development, so which is the sensory motor, the pre-operational, concrete operational, and the formal operational. So when we say sensory motor stage, it is a birth to 2 years old, so or what we call infancy. So, infants construct and understand of the world by coordinating sensory experiences. Sensory experiences, for example, seeing and hearing with motor actions. So, motor actions, example is reaching and touching. So, develop object permanence or their memory. Realize that when we say object permanence, even though when we say the object, their memory know that those objects so still exist in their mind even when the objects are out of their sight, right? That is a developed object permanence. And infants progress from the reflexive instinctual actions at birth to the beginning of problem solving rather, sorry, which is the intellectual and the symbolic abilities, which is the language towards the end of this stage. So they were able to have an intellectual and the symbolic abilities about language. That is the sensory motor stage. So in the pre-operational stage, it has a key features. Which are the egocentrism, animism, concentrations, and conservation. So when we say egocentrism, it is the child's thoughts and communications are typically egocentric. For example, uh, about their own point of view. So when for example the team mountain task explained by Jean Piaget. So he showed a child of team mountains and then a doll, but the child has own the child has his own point of view. So instead of seeing those mountains, he see the dull instead. So that is the egocentrism. They thought about themselves, about their own point of view. That is egocentrism. So when we say animism, it is treating inanimate object as living ones. For example, so when we're child, also experience these things. We talk to our dolls. We play together with our dolls uh, and talk as if they are living things. They are living ones, right? So next we have the concentration. So when we say concentration, it is the process of concentrating on one limited aspect of stimulus and ignoring other aspects. It is noticed in conservation. That is concentrations, the process of concentrating on one limited aspect. So, so we all know that concentration is noticed as in conservation. So when I say conservation, on the other hand, is the knowledge that quantity is unrelated to the arrangement and physical appearance of they the objects. So the objects. So children's mean have the knowledge different knowledge or aspects about the particular objects. They have different knowledge on the appearance of the objects. It's unrelated to the particular object, right? Characterized by the appropriate use of logic. So the important process during this stage are seriation, sensitivity, classification, decentering, reversibility, conservations, elimination of egocentrism, and the performs operations. So discuss all those things. So when we say seriation rather, it is the ability to sort objects in order according to their size, shape, or any other characteristic. So, for example, if we're going to give our nephew, different size object, so they will may place them accordingly, so they can identify already. So, and then we proceed to the transitivity. So, when I say transitivity, it is the ability to recognize logical relationships among elements in a serial order. Example, if A is taller than B, so and B is taller than C, then A must be taller than C. So that is transitivity. So they already know. I mean, they already recognize. They have the ability to recognize logical relationship. And then we have classifications. So when I say classification, it is the ability to group objects together on the basis of common features. So the child also begins to get the idea that one set can include another. For example, there is a class of objects called dogs. So there is also class called animals. But all dogs are also animals, right? So that class of animals include that of dog. So they already know. I mean, they can classify some object. I mean, they can classify object according to their classifications. So what that is classifications. So next, let's proceed to the dissenting. So dissenting is the ability to take multiple aspects of a situation into account. For example, sorry, the child will no longer perceive an exceptionally wide but short cup to contain less than a normally wide taller cup. So they will understand. So if we are young, uh, there's a two cups, and then it is a big one and the taller one, and then there is a small one but a wide one. So when we're young, so maybe if we're young, we're going to choose the small one. I mean the taller one the taller one, but just a small, taller but small. But when when we're in the stage, we're going to to choose the wide cup, which is small, because we already know that it does more it I mean it's contained more than the taller cup, right? So that is the centering. So now let's proceed to the reversibility. So reversibility, it is the child understand that numbers or objects can be changed, then return to their original site. So example, 4 plus 4 equals 8. And then if we change it, example, 8 minus 4 equals 4. So there is an original quantity of it. So there is still a number of the object can be changed but return to their original state. So that is reversibility. We reverse the just like what I did with the 4 plus 4 equals 8, 8 minus 4 equals 4. We reverse the number, they will return into their original state. That is reversibility. So next we have conservation. So conservation is understanding that the quantity, length, or number of items is unrelated to the arrangement of appearance of the object or item. So, for example, sorry, I have a surgery. So, next, conservation. So, conservation, understanding that the quantity, length, or number of items is unrelated to the arrangement or appearance of the object or item. So, the quantity of the link, or a number of that particular item is unrelated to their appearance or the object appearance of the object or the particular item. That is conservation. So we have now the elimination of egocentrism. So when we say egocentrism, it is the ability to view things from another aspects, right? So ability to view things from another aspect. So now let's proceed to the child, to the performs operation. So the child in this stage is a child performs operation. Example, combining, separating, multiplying, repeating, dividing, and so on. There's a lot of activities. There's a lot of operation. There's a lot of activities that we can apply in this child performs operation, because we all know that child can already have a lot of knowledge to do things a lot. Example, combining, separating, multiplying, repeating, and dividing. So they have enough knowledge on that in that particular operations. So now let's proceed to the formal operational stage from 12 years old and above, or the adolescence and adulthood. So the thought becomes increasing in this stage. So the thought becomes increasingly flexible and abstract. For example, they can carry out systematic experience, so step-by-step process. So they already know because they already have that knowledge. So, and they have the ability to systematically solve problem in logical and methodological ways. So when they're going to solve problems, they have a method on how are they going to solve on that particular problem. That is a formal operational stage. So, and then they already understand that nothing is absolute, but everything is relative. And then it developed their skills such as logical thought, deductive reasoning, as well as inductive reasoning, and systematic planning, and so on. There's a lot more. And then they understand that the rules of any game or social systems are developed by a man. So they already identify, they already know. So by man, by mutual agreement, and hence those games rules or systems could be changed or modified, right? And then the way of thinking is that most advanced. It is most advanced. Although the knowledge it has to work with will change. So the knowledge you already have to work with will also change. So we have so the Jean Piaget's theory contribution to education is that Piaget's theory helped educators, parents, and investigators to comprehend the capacity of children in different stages. So, he made us conscious with the way children and adults think, right? Because we all know that children and adults have different thoughts, have different thinking. So, a lot of school programs had been redesigned, taking as base Piaget's discoveries. Be enhanced more, right? And then Piaget made a revolution with the developmental psychology, concentrating all his attention to the mental process and his role with behavior. So those are the contributions of Jean Piaget's theory to education. So that's the end of my discussions about the topic 2. So now let's proceed to the next reporters to discuss the topic 3 and 4 as well as the the following topic. So thank you for please.
A pleasant day to each and everyone, especially to you, Coach Jude Martinez. Today, I am going to discuss my topic, the topic 3, which is Psychosocial Theory of Development by Erik Erikson, or known as Erik Homburger Erikson, a father of psychosocial development, a world-famed psychoanalyst, anthropologist, psychohistorian, and a medical school professor. Yet, he had no college of any kind. Psychosocial development theory. Psychosocial development theory is based on 8 stages of development. Erikson's theory is based on the idea that development through life is a series of stages, which are each defined by a crisis or challenge. The early stages provide the foundations for later stages. So Erikson says that if a child does not resolve a crisis in a particular stage, they will have problems in later stages. For example, if an adolescent does not establish their own identity, they will have difficulty in relationships as an adult. Erikson maintained that personality develops in a predetermined order through 8 stages of psychosocial development, from infancy to adulthood. During each stage, the person experiences a psychosocial crisis which could have a positive or negative outcome for personality development. For Erikson in 1958 to 1963, these crises are of a psychosocial nature because they involve psychological needs of the individual, conflicting with the needs of society. According to the theory, successful completion of each stage results in a healthy personality and the acquisition of basic virtues. Basic virtues are characteristic strengths which the ego can use to resolve subsequent crises. Failure to successfully complete a stage can result in a reduced ability to complete further stages and therefore a more unhealthy personality and sense of self. These stages, however, can be resolved successfully at a later time. What is psychosocial development? So, what exactly did Erikson's theory of psychosocial development entail? Much like Sigmund Freud, Erikson believes that personality developed in a series of stages. Unlike Freud's theory of psychosexual stages, Erikson's theories describe the impact of social experience across the whole lifespans. Erikson was interested in how social interaction and relationships played a role in the development and growth of human beings. Each stages in Erickson's theory builds on the preceding stages and paves the way for following periods of development. In each stage, Erickson believed that people experience a conflict that serves as a turning point in development. In Erickson's view, these conflicts are centered on their development as psychological quality or failing to develop the quality. During these times, the potential for personal growth is high, but is so the potential for failure. If people successfully deal with a conflict, they emerge from the stage with psychological strengths that will serve them for the rest of their lives. If they fail to deal effectively with these conflicts, they may not develop the essential skills needed for a strong sense of self. Erickson also believed that a sense of competence motivates behaviors and actions. Each stage in Erickson's theory is concerned with becoming competent in an area of life. If the stage is handled well, the person will feel a sense of mastery, which is sometimes referred to as an ego strength or ego quality. If the stage is managed poorly, the person will emerge with a sense of inadequacy in that aspect of development. And the next slide showing the stages of development from infancy to adulthood and also the psychosocial crisis, example of maladaptation and malignancy behavior in every stages, and so on. That's all. Thank you so much. So let's proceed to my next topic, the topic 4, which is the sociocultural theory of Lev Vygotsky. Let's proceed to the Lev Vygotsky objective. Who is Vygotsky and his background? Second, let's enumerate the two main principal elements of cultural theory. And the third was, what are the two features of zone proximal development? Third, what are the four basic principles underlying the Vygotsky framework? So let's proceed to the Vygotsky background. Vygotsky background, the Mozart of psychology. Lev Simonovich Vygotsky was born in Western Russia on November 5, 1986. His father, Semilavovich, founded the Society of Education in Gomel and held a wild, wide range of active interests including foreign language, history, literature, theater, and arts. His mother was educated as teacher. In 1917, he graduated from Moscow University with a degree of law. Vygotsky completed 270 scientific articles, numerous lectures, and 10 books based on a wide range or Marxist-based psychological and teaching theories. He is considered a seminal thinker in psychology, and much of his work is still discovered and explored today. He died on June 10, 1934 at 37 after long battle with TB. So let's proceed to the introduction of Vygotsky theory. So Vygotsky theory is that the social interaction plays a very important in cognitive development. Did not focus on the individual child, but on the child as a product of social interaction, especially with adults. Focus on dynamic interactions rather than child by himself. People thinking differs dramatically between cultures because different cultures stress different things. And the two main principles of Vygotsky's theory. First, the more knowledgeable other, or MKO, refers to anyone who has better understanding or higher ability level than the learner. Nor the second, the normally thought of as being a teacher trainer or older adult, that MKO could also pierce a younger person, even computers. Second, the two main principles, zone of proximal development. Second, difference between what child can accomplish alone and she or he can accomplish with the guidance of others. So let's proceed to the two features of ZPD. Scaffolding, appropriate assistance given by the teacher to assess the learner accomplish a task. So requires that an instructor shows example how to solve a problem while controlling the learning environment so that students can take things step by step, expanding their knowledge without excessive frustration. Second, the reciprocal teaching. A highly successfully teaching method, it provides an environment of an open dialogue between student and teacher, which goes beyond a simple question and answer session. And let's proceed to the four basic principles underlying the Vygotsky's framework. First, children construct their knowledge. Second, development cannot be separated from its social context. Third, learning is mediated. Fourth, language plays a central role in mental development. And two types of mental function, the lower mental function and the higher mental function. So lower mental function are those which we are born, are the natural functions and the genetically determined, while the higher mental function are acquired and developed through social interaction. So the conclusion of Vygotsky theory. Sociocultural theory considered learning as a semiotic process where participation in socially mediated activities is essential. Next, social interaction emphasized that effective learning happens through participation in social activities, making the social context of learning crucial. Vygotsky theory was important in education since these works provide tools for the development of individuals' learning. So that's all about Lev Vygotsky theory. Thank you so much.
City. Okay, for today's video, I will explain what is ecological theory by Yuri Bronfenfener. Yuri Bronfenfener was a Russian-born American psychologist who is known for his ecological system theory. Born on April 29, 1917 in Moscow, and he died on September 25, 2005. Ecological theory, also called development in context of human ecology theory, was developed by Yuri Bronfenfener. It offers a framework through which community psychologists examine individuals, relationships within communities, and the wider society. The theory is also commonly referred to as the ecological system framework. It identifies 5 environmental systems with which an individual interacts, which is microsystem, mesosystem, exosystem, macrosystems, and chronosystem. So the first one is microsystem. Refers to the institutions and group that most immediately and directly impact the child's development including family, school, religions, institutions, neighborhood, and peers. Mesosystem consists of interconnection between the microsystem, for example, between the family and teachers or between the child, peers, and the family. So the next is exosystem involves links between social settings that do not involve the child. For example, a child experience at home may be influenced by their parents' experiences at work. A parent might receive a promotion that requires more travel, which in turn increases conflict with the other parents resulting in changes in their patterns of interaction with the child. Macrosystem describes overarching culture that influences the developing child as well as the macrosystem and mesosystem embedded in those culture. Cultural context can differ based on geographic location, socioeconomic status, poverty, and ethnicity. Members of the cultural group often share a common identity, heritage, and values. Macrosystems evolve across the time and from generation to generation. Chronosystem. This is the last consists of the pattern of environmental events and transition over the life course, as well as changing socio-historical circumstances. For example, researchers have found that the negative effects of divorce on children often appear in the first year after the divorce. By 2 years after the divorce, family interaction is less chaotic and more stable. An example of changing socio-historical circumstances is the increase in opportunities for women to pursue a career during the last 30 years. And that's all for the ecological theory of Yuri Bronfenbrenner. Okay, right now we will tackle about classical conditioning by Ivan Petrovich Pavlov, a Russian physiologist born on September 26, 1849 and died on February 27, 1936. A classical conditioning, also known as Pavlovian or respondent conditioning, is a learning through association and was discovered by Pavlov, a Russian physiologist. In simple terms, two stimuli are linked together to produce a new learned response in a person or animals. The most famous example of classical conditioning was Pavlov's experiment with dogs who salivated in response to a bell tone. Pavlov showed that when a bell was sounded each time the dog was fed, the dog learned to associate the sound with the presentation of food. There are three stages of classical conditioning. At each stage, the stimuli and response are given special scientific terms. Stage 1, before conditioning. In this stage, the unconditioned stimuli, UCS, produces an unconditioned response. Unconditioned response in an organisms. For example, a stomach virus would produce a response of nausea. In another example, a perfume could create a response of happiness or desire. Stage 2. During conditioning. During this stage, a stimulus which produces no response is associated with the unconditioned stimulus, at which point it now becomes known as the conditioned stimulus. For example, a stomach virus might be associated with eating a certain food such as chocolate. Also, a perfume might be associated with a specific person. Stage 3. After conditioning, now the conditioned stimulus has been associated with the unconditioned stimulus to create a new conditioned response. For example, a person who has been associated with nice perfume is now found attractive. Also, Chocolate, which was eaten before a person was sick with virus, now produces a response of nausea. So the classical conditioning, also known as Pavlovian or responsive conditioning, is learning through association and was discovered by Pavlov, a Russian physiologist. In simple terms, two stimuli are linked together to produce a new learned response in a person or animal.
Operant conditioning by Burroughs Frederick Skinner, most commonly known as B.F. Skinner. Skinner is regarded as the father of operant conditioning, but his work was based on Thorndike's law of effect, 1898. According to this principle, behavior that is followed by pleasant consequences is likely to be repeated, and behavior followed by unpleasant consequences is less likely to be repeated. It is like a action with punishable consequences will less likely to be repeated, and an action with reward will most likely to be repeated. Like, for example, if you commit a crime, you will be in jail and won't do it again. And another is you were given a extra pay for your overtime. Most likely, you will repeat this action because there will be a pleasant reward. Skinner introduced a new term into the law of effect, reinforcement. Behavior which is reinforced tends to be repeated. Behavior which is not reinforced tends to die out or be extinguished. Skinner studied operant conditioning by conducting experiments using animals which he placed in a Skinner box, which was similar to Thorndike's puzzle box. Skinner identified three types of response or operant that can follow behavior. Neutral operants, responses from the environment that neither increase nor decrease the probability of a behavior being repeated. Reinforcers, response from the environment that increase the probability of behavior being repeated. Reinforcers can be either positive or negative. Punishers, respond from the environment that decrease the likelihood of a behavior being repeated. Punishment weakens behavior. A Skinner box, also known as an operant conditioning chamber, is a device used to objectively record an animal's behavior in a compressed time frame. An animal can be rewarded or punished for engaging in a certain behaviors, such as lever pressing for rats or key pecking for pigeons. Operant conditioning uses in education. In the conventional learning situation, operant conditioning applies largely to issue of class and student management. Rather than to learning content, it is relevant to shaping skill and performance. Multiple Intelligences Theory by Howard Gardner. The theory of multiple intelligences was proposed by Harvard psychologist Howard Gardner. While he had originally planned to study law, he was inspired to study developmental psychology by the works of Jean Piaget. Theory of multiple intelligences. This theory suggests that traditional psychometric views of intelligence are too limited. Gardner first outlined his theory back in 1983, book of Frames and of Mind, The Theory of Multiple Intelligences, where he suggested that all people have different kinds of intelligence, such as visual spatial intelligence. People who are strong in visual spatial intelligence are good at visualizing things. These individuals are often good with direction as well as maps, charts, videos, and pictures. Linguistic verbal intelligence. People who are strong in linguistic verbal intelligence are able to use words well, both when writing and speaking. These individuals are typically very good at writing stories, memorizing information, and reading. Logical math intelligence. People who are strong in logical mathematical intelligence are good at reasoning, recognizing patterns, and logically analyzing problems. These individuals tend to think conceptually about numbers, relationships, and patterns. Bodily kinesthetic intelligence. Those who have a high bodily kinesthetic intelligence are said to be good at body movement, performing actions, and physical control. People who are strong in this area tend to have excellent hand-eye coordination and dexterity. Musical intelligence. People who have strong musical intelligence are good at thinking in patterns, rhythms, and sounds. They have a strong appreciation for music and are often good at musical composition and performance. Interpersonal intelligence. Those who have a strong interpersonal intelligence are good at understanding and interacting with other people. These individuals are skilled at assessing the emotions, motivations, desires, and intention of those around them. Interpersonal intelligence. Individuals who are strong in interpersonal intelligence are good at being aware of their own emotional states, feelings, and motivation. They tend to enjoy self-reflection and analysis, including daydreaming, exploring relationships with others, and assessing their personal strengths. Naturalistic intelligence. Naturalistic is the most recent addition to Gardner's theory and has been met with more resistance than his original 7 intelligences. According to Gardner, individuals who are high in this type of intelligence are more tuned with nature and often interested in nurturing, exploring the environment, and learning about other species. These individuals are said to be highly aware of even subtle changes to their environment. To capture the full range of abilities and talents that people possesses, Gardner theorized that people do have not have just an intellectual capacity, but have many kinds of intelligence, including musical, interpersonal, spatial, visual, and linguistic intelligences. Multiple intelligences in education. By applying the theory of multiple intelligences in the classroom, educators take into consideration the different types of learners they might have in their class, reinforce all the types of intelligences in every student, and allow for an individual learning process, and will ultimately enable each learner to utilize his or her specific abilities and demonstrate learning.
Hi everyone, especially to Coach Jude Martires. My name is Nicole Janine Albacalso, BT Led 1D ICT. Today I will discuss about metacognition by John Flavel. Metacognition means thinking about thinking. The concept was created by John Flavel in 1970s. It includes all the process involved in regulating how we think. There are three theories of metacognition, such as 1971 metamemory, 1976 metacognitive skill development in childhood, 1979 four classes of metacognition. In 1971, Flavel was proposed the term metamemory to explain about how we store and recall information. This term was later changed to metacognition and a process of thinking how we store and recall information in our minds. For Flavel's metamemory was intentional. Thinking about how we think can be stumbled upon. It needs to be strategic. based on specific techniques such as self-questioning. Example, what should I do these activities? Foresighted, we need to plan our thinking before conducting a task but coming up with a plan of attack for our studies. Example, what is the best thing that I can do for my activities? Used to accomplish a goal, we need to be using meta-strategy to be better at learning or working. Example, I have to prove myself that I will make it and to be creative. In 1976, metacognitive skill development in childhood identified the three stages of metacognition in early childhood. Stage 1, store. Young children begin to intentionally, consciously, there are basic strategies such as repetition and focus to ensure information is stored in their minds for future use. Example, I have fully of toy that I hold and I will give him to my brother. And I will let him know that what toys that I gave him. Stage 2, recall. Children learn strategies that help them store information in their working memory to recall in its near future. They can recall information when they predict it will be useful, such as in a game of memory. Example, like I will teach my sibling first, then I will let them read again if he or she got the answer what I have read before. Stage 3, systematic strategies. Children use systematic strategies to recall information even when they did not predict that would be required. They use active recall strategies such as self-questioning, thinking aloud, and mnemonic aids so that information can be recalled from longer-term memory. Example, I'm working with my sibling and I will teach her how to read phrase by phrase. In 1979, four classes of metacognition. Number 1, metacognitive knowledge is a person's belief about how they can affect their own cognition. Example, my friend who believes that they have the ability to control their own cognitive process may be understood to have an internal locus of control. My friend is likely more motivated to try to control their thoughts processes than someone who does not believe their own ability to control their thoughts. Number 2, metacognitive experience are a person own in the moment subjective application of their meta-thinking to achieve tasks. Flavel suggests that this is a stream of consciousness process. Example, providing a personal feedback through a task to ensure you are using the right thought processes to succeed. Number 3, tasks or goals. Your tasks or goals are the outcomes you want to achieve when thinking about your own thinking. Example, I like to create something activities like my teacher told me to draw one point perspective and I will make it my own creativity. Number 4, strategies or activities are all the strategies you can use to achieve your cognitive goals. Example, I will work hard so that I can achieve one of my goals someday. That's all. Thank you. Especially to Coach Jude Martinez. My name is Nicole Janine El Bacalso, BT-led 1D ICT. Today, I will discuss about Law of Learning by Edward Thorndike. He is an American psychologist whose work on animal behavior and learning process led to theory of connectionism, which states that behavioral responses to specific stimuli are established through a process of trial and error that affect neural of connections between the stimuli and the most satisfying responses. There are three principal laws of learning, such as law of readiness, law of exercise, law of effect. Law of readiness. It states that when an organism is ready to act, action is satisfying, inaction is annoying. The reverse is true. So if an organism is not ready to act, action is annoying, inaction is satisfying. Example, my classmate know the answer, feels satisfied if he or she is cold. On the other hand, he feels annoyed if asked to recite when he or she doesn't know the answer. When my classmate is not ready to learn, he cannot be forced to learn. The teacher should adopt the principle of individual differences. Law of exercise. It states that exercise or practice in reinforced learning. This places significance on drill repetition and review. Repetition invariably results frequent recitation of a poem if fully comprehended result to mastery. Example, remember in grade school when the teacher would you to write spelling words 3 each times and then used in a sentence. Your teacher was practicing this law. Law of effect. It states that learning is threatened, it gives satisfaction to the learner. It is weakened, it is give annoyance to the learner. The implication was the teacher should make learning session as enjoyable as possible. One way of doing things by praising appropriately to those who are performing well. Example, if you study, then you get a good grade on a test, and you will be more likely to study for the next exam. That's all. Thank you.